Welcome back. Now, I know that was a lot to get through. That whole last section was a lot of math and a lot of theory. And hopefully you're a little bit encouraged by the fact that most of those calculations can be done with easy to use blueprint nodes in the engine. But now that we've got that math under our belt, we're equipped to attempt our first actual game project. And I think that that deserves its own game project. We can create a completely new project. So I'm going to launch the engine right here from the Epic Games Launcher. And at the time of me starting this next section, Unreal Engine version 5.4 preview has come out. I think I'm going to create this project in that version of the engine, but it shouldn't really matter. Nothing we're doing in this game project should be different for any of the engine versions as long as we're in 5 and not Unreal Engine 4. So I'm going to launch 5.4 preview and make a new project. So with the project browser, I'm going to go to Games, and this will be a blank project. I'm going to start from scratch. Now, I do need to select a folder, so this is going to go into my UE5 projects folder. You can put yours wherever you like. And for this project, we're going to be using our drone, and I'd like to call this game project Bad Bot. It's short, it's sweet, and it kind of explains what the game is about, a bad robot. Let's go ahead and create a blank project using Blueprint as the project default. We'll go ahead and create. And right away, I'm going to change a couple of settings here. For one, I don't want this open world level. I want to create a new map and set that as my editor startup map. So as I usually do when making a new project, I always go to the content folder. I make a new folder in it called Maps. And I go to File and create a new level. And I'm going to use Basic for this. So we're going to go ahead and click on Create. And that way we have a more basic level, but we at least have sky and some lighting so that we can at least see what we're doing while we're developing. Now, I do need to save this level. So I'm going to go to File and Save Current Level. I'm going to save it into my Maps folder. And I'm going to call this Bot Level. Doesn't really matter what we call it. But I'm going to save it as bot level, and I'm going to go to my project settings. So edit, project settings, and I'm going to go to maps and modes and set my editor startup map to bot level. And I'm also going to set my game default map to bot level as well. So now we'll always open up to this level. Now, another setting that I always like to do, and we've already seen this setting, is to make my asset open location set to main window. And we do that by going to Edit and Editor Preferences, and we set Asset Editor Open Location to main window. And then we don't have to dock our new windows up here next to our bot level tab every time we open a new blueprint or asset editor. So now we have our new project, and we know we're going to need that drone mesh. So we're going to go ahead and import it. We're going to need a folder for that. I'm going to right click on content, make a new folder, and I typically like to make an assets folder just so that all my meshes, sound effects, materials are all easy to find right here in the assets folder. And I want a folder for my drone specifically. So I'm going to make a new folder in assets, and I'm going to call it drone and open that up. And we're going to import our drone mesh. Now, we're not going to use the same mesh that we used in the last section. In the assets provided for this course, you may have noticed that alongside SM Drone, we also have SM Drone 2 mats. And this is the same mesh, but it has different data for its materials. It actually has two separate materials, and we're going to see in this video how a mesh can have two separate materials and why we might want that. So we're going to go ahead and get that SM Drone 2 mats and drag it into our drone folder. And that's going to give us the FBX import options. Now, material import method is set to create new materials, and we don't have materials just yet, but we can allow Unreal Engine to create some default materials for us. So I'm going to leave that setting as is, and I'm going to click Import All. Now, no smoothing group information is a common warning that we get when we import meshes. And that just means that our mesh doesn't have data for smoothing groups, but it doesn't need it. So we can close that message log. And our content browser pops up, and we have in our drone folder, our drone 2 mats. and two materials, drone and drone glass. So it's kind of handy that we already have two materials. Let's go ahead and open SM Drone 2 Mats and see what that looks like. I'm going to close this content browser window, and here we have our drone. Now the colors look a little flat. They're not quite shiny enough. The metallic parts don't really look metallic. So that tells us we need to go and look at these materials and see what they look like. So I'm going to first open mDrone and see what that looks like. And we just need to make sure that these textures are plugged into the correct inputs. And it looks like we don't quite have everything. We have our color, we have emissive color, and we have our normal map, but we're missing three additional properties. We need ambient occlusion, we need roughness, and we need metallic. And if you'll recall, if we go back to our asset pack, we have these 4 Targa files. So SM Drone 2 Mats doesn't have one of these, and that's the occlusion roughness metallic, the ORM.targa file. We're going to want that in our project as well. So let's go ahead and drag that one in, tDrone ORM.targa, and let's drag that straight into mDrone. And we're going to use the red, green, and blue channels for our occlusion roughness metallic. So red goes into ambient occlusion, green goes into roughness, and blue goes into metallic. And if we go ahead and apply this change, we can go back to our drone and we can see that it looks better. Now, the red glass dome doesn't look better, and that's because we have a separate material assigned to the glass dome. This mesh has 2 materials, and each one has its own index under material slots. The one that we changed is mDrone, which is assigned to element 0. But drone glass, that's the one applied to the dome here. And if we go ahead and click on the curved arrow to reset it to world grid material, we'll see that that's where that material is applied, right here on the dome, nowhere else on the mesh. And that is dictated by the mesh creation software that was used to create this mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back to drone glass, and I'm going to click on the browse to icon so we can open mDrone glass. Let's open that up, and we're going to want this material to be slightly different than our mDrone material. And the reason is because there is additional geometry behind that dome. We just can't see it because this material is opaque. We can't see through it. To be able to see through it, we have to change some things on our drone glass material. For one, we're going to click on the result node, the big node to the right, and go to its details panel and change the blend mode. Notice blend mode is set to opaque. That means we can't see through it. But if we click the drop down, we have several options, and the one that I want to use is called translucent. Translucent materials can use opacity. So on the result node, this opacity input is now available, and a lot of the other ones are no longer available. And the opacity tells us how much we can see through this material. So we're going to set the value of our opacity here. We can hard code it in straight into the box, or we can hold the 1 key down and click, and we can get a node. That is a scalar value, and we can plug that in. Now, I just plugged in a value of 0, and now we can't see anything. But if we set this to some value between 0 and 1, such as 0.65, it's now partially visible. Its opacity is 0.65. Now we can click Apply and go back to our SM Drone 2 Mats, and we can see now our glass dome is slightly see-through, right? We can see through to some of that geometry on the inside. It's kind of a flat color though, so we do still want some of those other textures in here, such as the normal map and so on. So let's get that normal map. We're just going to drag it in and hook its RGB straight into normal here. We're also going to get occlusion roughness metallic, bring that in and hook up red to ambient occlusion, green to roughness, blue to metallic. So we have these values plugged in, but as we can see, the inputs are grayed out. So how do we get those back? Well, let's click on that result node and scroll down a little bit. until we get to lighting mode. It's set to volumetric non-directional, which just means that lighting will be calculated for a volume without directionality, but we can open that drop down and choose a different setting. And for glass, we're going to want surface translucency volume. Notice that once we do that, a lot of those inputs that we're using are no longer grayed out, and our material looks more glassy. It's more shiny and reflective. We can click apply for that. And go back to SM Drone 2 Mattes and notice that our dome is more shiny and we can still see through it. And if you don't like this opacity level, say it's a little too opaque for you, you can go back and change this from 0.65 to 0.45. You know, experiment with the values. 0.45 looks a little bit more see-through. And now we have a glass dome and we can see a little camera inside. So our drone looks a lot better. Okay, so now that we have our drone asset in here, we're just about ready to start developing. I'm just going to organize our drone folder just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and rename the drone from SM Drone 2 Mattes to just SM Drone. And I'm going to make a new folder in here called Materials. And we can go ahead and get all of these materials and textures into that folder. I'm just going to click on M Drone and hold the Control key on my keyboard and click on the other files, everything but SM Drone, and I'm going to drag them onto Materials and click Move here so that they're all moved into the Materials folder and our drone folder looks a lot neater. And now that we have our drone in our new BadBot project, we're ready to create this game project, and we'll continue in the next video. I'll see you soon.